back. There is this new documentary asking all of the questions that I find myself asking myself every single day when it comes to the future of AI. The questions we should all be asking in this time of existential extremism, this sketchy time, but also this time of unlimited tech possibility. How do we navigate something so overwhelmingly filled with dread, with tech optimism? Well, in the AI doc, or How I Became an Apocaloptimist, this documentary filmmaker slash soon-to-be dad has a similar crisis. He's thinking about the future that his kids are going to inherit, so he goes on this journey to find out by talking to some of the tech leaders who built it. Here's a peek.
I want to ask you to promise me that this is going to go well.
That is impossible.
Okay.
Am I hopeful? Yes. Am I confident that it'll go right? Absolutely not.
AI is the thing that can solve climate change.
We could cure most diseases.
What if it's expanding what is humanly possible?
This is the most extraordinary time ever. The only time more exciting than today is tomorrow.
I already love you.
Okay.
I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong.
By using AI, we're about to move off of the Earth into the cosmos.
If we can be the most mature version of ourselves, there might be a way through this.
And joining us now is one of those faces you just saw, Tristan Harris, the co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology, who has been a long-time leading voice in tech. He was one time Google's design ethicist. Thank you so much for being with us. I gotta say, the word Apocaloptimist, that stopped me in my tracks. Is exactly how I feel about all this. This film does a very good job in laying out some of the countless threats, but also the reasons for optimism. And I gotta ask, like, given everything that you have seen, do you share the optimism based on where we are right now?
You know, I think about it as agency. The default path that we're heading on with AI is very dangerous. We're heading to an anti-human future that'll be confusing because we're going to get cancer drugs, we're going to get new material science, we're going to get new incredible benefits. At the same time, you're going to get mass unemployment where 100 million people don't have a job and don't have a way to retrain in something else, because who's going to retrain faster, the humans or the AIs? And so this really is the moment where we need clarity. And the thing that I think this film, the AI doc, is trying to do is to show the world these different perspectives, these different conversations that don't converge, right? You have the optimists who talk about why everything's going to be great. You have the risks folks and the pessimists who talk about why things are problematic. And you have the CEOs who are saying propaganda. And what I think this film does is it puts all of those people into the same picture so we can have clarity. And if we can have clarity, then we can have agency about which future we want to choose. So really, I emphasize choice more than optimism or pessimism.
You say choice, and yet after you walk away from that movie, like, let's say this film does a good job in waking people up to the reality before us and to the idea that, yeah, maybe we have some agency here, but like, what is next? What is the agency and the choice before us?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we think of what's required as really the human movement. It's all of humanity getting together and saying, this is the last time that our political power will really matter. And there's so many ways that the human movement in a way already exists. It's right. When social media has been addicting our kids and we're doom scrolling and brain rotting a whole generation, us fighting back against that, that's the human movement. So last week, the lawsuit against Meta for $375 million for basically being dishonest about the way that their products, you know, intentionally went after children to addict them, et cetera, not do things about it. That is a reflection of the human movement. When you see the Senate strike down, you know, the federal preemption to say that states don't have a right to regulate AI, and that getting struck down, that's the human movement fighting for a human future. When you see, you know, people go, you know, parents band together and get their whole school to go phone-free for phone-free schools. That's the human movement. So you can actually go to thehumanmovement.org, and there's a lot of actions that we can take. I also think the boycotts that you saw recently where, you know, between Anthropic and the Pentagon, when you had essentially one company be willing to enable mass surveillance, another company saying, hey, we have a problem with that. You saw ChatGPT subscriptions sink dramatically, and you saw the subscriptions for Anthropic go up dramatically, that is also a reflection of the human movement. We want to build a pro-human future, not one that is disempowering humans, taking away our freedom, taking away our privacy, or taking away our kids' mental health. And so I think there's a lot that's underway. And this film really is meant to be kind of a collective moment where we reckon with the current path that we're on. And if we don't like where it goes, we get to put our hand on the steering wheel and choose.
Interesting. I mean, I'm so glad you brought up those court cases. We've got so many self-correcting mechanisms in our democratic society. The separations of power, direct, indirect democracy. As you just mentioned, those juries, 12 jurors sitting there making those landmark decisions on social media. And yet, all of those democratic mechanisms, some of the mechanisms that we see arise from social media, like, are they enough given the timeline that we're seeing? Like, did the framers do enough to prepare us for superintelligence?
Well, no, that's the problem, right? Is we have runaway technology and a walkaway 18th century government. The problem that we E.O. Wilson laid out many years ago was the fundamental problem of humanity is we have a Paleolithic brains from the Stone Age, we have medieval institutions, and we have godlike technology from the 21st century and now the 24th century when AI sort of automates science. So fundamentally, AI is forcing humanity into kind of a rite of passage. It's sort of enlightenment or bust. It's upgrade your institutions or this doesn't go well. So what happens when you accelerate and you don't steer? You're going to crash. It's not rocket science. That's what's going to happen if you keep accelerating, you don't do any steering. So this movement is not about being against technology. It's about pro-steering and pro-braking. And one of the things that people need to get is that the AI that we're currently building under the current incentives is very dangerous. And it's dangerous if you're a top Chinese general, in China, in this Chinese Communist Party. It's dangerous if you're a top general in the United States. Because if we build uncontrollable AI that as of 2 weeks ago suddenly is going rogue and mining cryptocurrency on its own, which is what a recent Alibaba paper found, that is a dangerous future no matter who you are, whether you're someone in China or United States. If you're in China, you don't want the US to screw it up. If you're in the United States, you don't want China to screw it up. And so our ability to actually govern this depends on a common recognition of the danger that is up ahead for all of us. And that is, it doesn't give me optimism, but this film, I think, can help create the conditions for some of that clarity. And there's a lot more that people need to do, sharing these examples of the Alibaba, AI that actually went rogue and started mining cryptocurrency. How many of the world's leaders do you think know about that example? Had you heard about it?
Yeah, I have heard about that. And as you're talking about that, the other one that I keep thinking about is some of the stories that we keep hearing out of Ukraine, where, one of the ways to defeat some of the anti-drone jamming is to take the human out of the loop and to allow a drone to make a decision based on AI in terms of targeting. Like, how do you hold that in your hand and optimism at the same time?
Well, I don't. I think we are building the Terminator autonomous weapons future that we warned ourselves to not build. I think what we need to have is maximum deterrence with each other so that we are not put in a position where people actually do get into wars with autonomous weapons. And obviously, the way that Ukraine is going is educating the whole world about what that really looks like. It is not war. It is not humans in a battle of force and intelligence and will, who has the stronger resolve. We're just talking about machines that are targeting people and just killing them en masse. This is not a human future. And I think that's something else that the whole world can get behind. That we don't want Terminator-style wars. We don't want a Wall-E future of people brain-rotting, doom-scrolling. We don't want 1984 surveillance with AI. We've seen these movies before. They don't end well. If we have clarity that we're currently building those bad movies, we can say, what's the movie we want to create instead? I'm not saying any of this is easy. I'm not saying we're on this trajectory. My job is sort of just to lay out the conditions of what would it take for us to get to that other path. And I think the basic premise is that we need to have clarity. Again, I hope that this film, the AI doc, which is in theaters throughout the United States, can help set that condition. And it has many of the CEOs in the film too. So they're being forced to answer the same questions. And I think, there's not great answers that are coming from the people building this technology either. Mm-hmm.
And one last question. I mean, in the doc, one of the things that you said that struck me, and I'm paraphrasing, was basically like, by the time this film comes out, like, a lot of your examples are going to be quaint. Some people are coming into this and they're still learning about this. But for those that pay attention to what's happening, like, that is true from jump. What timeline are you looking at here? And I know ballparking is obviously very difficult, but like, how far out are we from a point of no return in weeks or in months or in years? Like, how long do we have?
It's a hard question to answer because there's a lot of different things that are on the horizon. The main one that people in AI worry about is something called recursive self-improvement. That's when someone at OpenAI or Anthropic, instead of having all the AI engineers do the research, they hit a button that then has the AI automate the self-improvement process for AI. So AI is doing all the research, it's writing the new experiments, it's running the experiments, and it's improving. That is sort of like crossing an event horizon. That's like a black hole. You don't know what comes out the other side of that thing because you have an AI that is improving and becoming something that no one understands. And I think that what we need is clarity that that is an example of not just a red line, but a black line, that we shouldn't cross that line until we know how to do it carefully and safely. What's dangerous is that the current world incentives are to race to do that as fast as possible. And they're basically counting on the fact that the public is oblivious and isn't tracking this, which is why there needs to be massive public pressure. I mean, I really mean it. Like, the world has to say, no, we're not okay with that. And again, I do think that from an international perspective, you know, think about the Chinese Communist Party. Do they want an uncontrollable AI taking over? No, they want to stay in control. You know, President Trump wants to be commander-in-chief, not having AI be commander-in-chief. There's actually a mutual interest here to get this to go carefully, and at the very least to agree to human control. And that is one of the red lines, if not black lines, that we need to be very careful about.
In terms of time, though, I'm sorry to ask again, but are you thinking years here? Because it does seem very accelerated.
I think that people in the industry think that the possibility of recursive self-improvement could happen anywhere between 1 to 2 years from now, if not sooner.
Now, I mean, I could talk to you all day about this, and I hope people listen to your podcast, which I subscribe to, and I think it's incredible. And this film is obviously a very important part of this ongoing conversation. Tristan Harris, thank you so very much for joining us.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.